Well, let's take it over to the NFL side of things now that Jim Feist has joined the show. And we're going to set it up with a really good big college or NFL football matchup. We could have brought you Kansas City and Buffalo, the obvious, but the whole world's going to talk that game to death. I'd rather watch it than talk it to death. But there's another pretty good football game on tap this weekend in the NFL, and that's going to be between division rivals when Baltimore takes on Pittsburgh with a lot on the line in this football game. Victor, how do you see these two teams shaking out from the AFC North?
So we're somewhere around, you know what, guys, before I get into my over-under play here, since we got Jim, I wanted to get his opinion on this one right now. After the this weekend's games, in which the underdogs had a fantastic weekend in pro football, I might add, I went to check current odds to win the division in the NFL. And there's one out there that I jumped all over on. And again, I wanted to get Jim's opinion because you couldn't get anywhere close to these great odds at the beginning of the season. And again, it's the current NFL odds to win their division. When was the last time you saw the San Francisco 49ers as a small to mid underdog to win their division? Jim, right now they're at plus $135 to plus 140 to win their division. The Arizona Cardinals are now the favorite. I couldn't pass it up, guys. I jumped all over the Niners at the plus 135 to win their division. They're finally rounding into shape health-wise. Christian McCaffrey is back. And in the second half of the season, you know Arizona is going to stumble once or twice like they have in the second half in the last 3 years. So I just wanted to get your guys' opinion on the fact that there's a really good underdog out there to win their division in the 49ers.
Jim, what's your take?
Well, first of all, we all know the pedigree of the Niners, and the Cardinals are coming up and coming, and they're actually doing a lot better than anybody gave them credit for. Their new head coach, they've got their quarterback has actually figured out a way to play from the pocket, and his pocket passing has been remarkable. They've changed the way he plays the position. He's actually become he takes the drops, his back foot hits, he throws the ball. And then, of course, his scrambling ability is amazing. He's very difficult. They're not somebody to take too lightly. What's the price on them, Victor?
Currently plus 115 for the Cardinals, plus 135 to 140 for the Niners.
I'd have to take the Niners because of what you said. They're bringing players back. The problem I have with the Niners, they had some out of season issues with the different players wanting to leave, contract issues. Then McCaffrey misses the first half of the season. It's a difficult situation because I don't like the chemistry. And what I don't like about their way they're playing is their special teams are very careless. They make a lot of mistakes on special teams. I like them. I'm not going to get involved. I don't think 135 is good enough. I'd like a bigger number.
But what were they to start the season to win the division? Anybody?
They had go ahead.
Big favorite, right?
Yeah, they had to be the favorite for sure.
Big favorite.
Sure.
Yeah, almost 2-1 favorite.
I mean, if you look here at the standings, I mean, even Seattle, they've got to match up with the Niners on Sunday. And if they were to beat the Niners, they'll be even with San Francisco with a split. The Rams have New England. If they win that game, there'll be a three-way tie for second. So it's not as easy as people think, but I completely 100% get what Victor's doing, just based on the fact that they are clearly the most talented team in the division.
Keep in mind, Arizona already has a win at San Francisco earlier the year, and this division could be decided on the final game of the season, January 5th, when the Cardinals host the 49ers. You look at the rest of the Arizona schedule this year, they still have games against the Panthers, the Patriots. They're at the Vikings. They have 2 games with Seattle. So their road may not be as difficult. You have to respect the pedigree of the 49ers. You also have to wonder if McCaffrey can stay healthy the rest of the year. I could certainly make a case for betting the 49ers to make the playoffs, but you probably have to lay a price there. I'd like to have gotten a little bit more with them to win the division, considering I'm not writing the Rams off quite yet, and I'm certainly not writing off Arizona and Seattle. Who knows? This could be what we thought the NFC South would be, but maybe with slightly better records.
Mhm.
How do you explain the Rams' performance on Monday night? They looked absolutely horrible. They looked like they didn't even belong in the game.
I thought it was a good spot for Miami. When you go back and take a look, Tua Rusty in his first game played well in that last second loss to Arizona, played well in that last second loss to Buffalo. We could see that team had a lot of energy once we saw Tua come back and perform as well as he has. So I think what had not been gotten a lot of credit is that the Miami defense has actually played fairly well, especially in those games when Tua was out, knowing that they really had to carry the load, and they were Miami. Yeah, they were uncompetitive in some of them, but they were competitive in others that they could have won thanks to the defense, because that offense was absolutely horrible without Tua.
Yeah, well, that's what the Rams are all about. When you expect them to play well, they don't, and when you expect them to struggle, they play well.
Yeah.
So,
And we have we do have a quarterback there that is reaching that age. It's that, I think Stafford is close to 38, 39.
I'm pretty sure he's past the 35 mark. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Well, he's 16. He's 16 years in the league after college. He's got to be in that range.
Wow.
Well, that was again, and Jim and I actually talked about this yesterday, I believe, on the show that we recorded, which is available. You can check it out on ProLine, and that is the fact that sort of like Andy said, the defense. I just think there was a bad matchup for the Rams. Miami's defense, they got those corners, and the Rams have to move the ball based on their passing game. I know they want to run, but it's about their passing game, and the Dolphins were able to shut down those receivers. And when you do that,
sure did.
You're in trouble. So,
Stafford, by the way, is 36. He turns 37 in February.
Okay.
Wow. Andy, before we switch gears here, I'm going to come to you on this football game. How do you see this game shaking out?
Pittsburgh and we're talking about Pittsburgh. Yeah, well, I like Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has done very well. One of the things, when Belichick retired last year at the end of the season, that meant that Harbaugh and Tomlin, I'm talking about the Ravens Harbaugh, is the two most senior tenured team coaches in the league. Tomlin started in 2007. Harbaugh started in 2008. They've had 32 regular season matchups. They've also met 4 times in the playoffs, and I think I forget, it was either 3-1 one side or the other, or 2-2. In those 32 games, if I recall the numbers correctly, 26 of them have been one-score games, and 13 of them have been decided by exactly 3 points. Okay. Which means my philosophy really throughout this series, about 4 or 5 years into it, was anytime you can get an underdog in the series of 3 points or more, but usually it's not much more, I'll take the points, because either team can win this game. I think the Steelers have won 18 of the 32, so 18-14, and I'll take the underdog, whether it's home or road. And then I take a look at Tomlin's success recently against the Ravens, including, I think, sweeping the series last year. I don't remember if much was at stake in the final game of the season. I think the Ravens had already locked up their number 1 seed, and the Steelers maybe needed to win to have a shot at the playoffs, which they ended up making at 9-8. So I'm on the Steelers in this game. I just can't ignore the great performances that these teams have had. There are no secrets between these teams. I mean, they met 32 plus 4, 36 times in the 16 seasons that they've both been coaches together. They know each other like almost any married couple would know after 16 years. So you give me the points with a team that has a good. Remember, the defense is very solid for Pittsburgh this year, not as solid for Baltimore, who's phenomenal against the run but susceptible to the pass. Could have seeding implications as well. But Pittsburgh would remain a game ahead. They still have a meeting coming up, and of course, the Buffalo Kansas City game could also have implications, because Buffalo. Or Kansas City already beat Buffalo, and it's too bad we're not talking about it. But this could be the one game that Kansas City could lose the rest of the way if you look at their schedule. They do get a rematch with Denver in week 18. And who would have thought that if Kansas City was going to lose their first game, it would have been on a game-ending field goal, and they ended up blocking it.
Yeah, unbelievable. You mentioned this the closeness of the series here, Andy. I mean, it's almost novel material. Somebody's a good writer out there. It's unbelievable. We call out in the newsletter this week that of their last 52 games they played, 24 of them almost half, have been decided by 3 or fewer points.
Wow.
Yeah.
24 out of 52 games have been decided by a field goal or less.
And that's going back to the mid 1990s.
Yeah, it's what these two teams do. They know each other real well. They know the importance of the game. They're both very, very well coached coming into this football contest here. The only thing that I see in the game here that draws me a little bit of concern to Baltimore is, and I call these cotter pins. When I see these cotter pins, all of a sudden they may be slipping, and it's an indication that we may see something change here. They lost the money 2 of the last 3 games at Baltimore, but look inside those losses. They allowed season high yards in both of those spread losses in the last 2 football games defensively. And if this football team is starting to wear down defensively, it's not the right time of the year to do just that. Not that Pittsburgh's an offensive powerhouse, but they're much, much stronger defensively. The other side of the coin on this here is what we called out in our newsletter here about Russell Wilson and this stat. It's like unfreaking believable. When he's been a dog in his career against teams that are coming off back-to-back wins, he's 19-4 to the spread.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's a pretty strong Russell Wilson stat right there going into this football game.
He's looking pretty good since he came over from Denver. I don't know what happened in Denver, but they couldn't get it together. He looks much better now.
Well, he's found the rainbow, Jim. You know those rainbow passes that he throws?
He can throw those. He can definitely toss those things.
Yeah, they're
and he's got 2 wide receivers that can really go get it. And when it's a jump ball, 50-50 ball, those guys can bring it down.
Oh, for sure. Hey, Greg, you mentioned about ProLine, and if you want to let our listeners know a little sample or a taste of what's going on with ProLine, all I can say is ProLine is back, or ProLine will be back. If you want to give our listeners some information out there, feel free to do so.
Yes, ProLine is back. We haven't really put it all together yet as far as the whole makeup of the channel, because it's been there have been some videos that have been posted, of course. Jim has been posting there a little bit, but for the most part, there's a lot of videos on there that are 7 years old. So so we're going to be introducing
back when I was young.
Yes. So we're going to be introducing a bunch of more content. We've already started this week. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. You're going to be able to catch this show on that channel. So we'll have a link in the description. At least for this week, we're still going to, of course, be posting on Playbook Experts and then letting everybody know where they can get it if they want to get it over on ProLine. But yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. I mean, we got all sorts of sports. I mean, Jim is gonna start talking basketball real soon. He's already started already betting on college basketball in November like a madman. So we're going to be talking golf in January, horse racing. It's going to be a lot of fun. And so, yeah, that's over at ProLine, and keep an eye on the description, the link in the description for that. So matter of fact, like I said, Jim and I just posted a video yesterday that you can find over on the website. We went through the entire schedule of games, including this one. And I made it, I made a really big move here on Pittsburgh based on, of course, the Playbook magazine. This is what I use. And what's great about the magazine, too, we don't talk about probably enough, is that whenever there's like a division matchup, which really what I like to do is I like to go into the 10-year history of the matchups. So I might not get it here. So I do it myself, and I say, okay, well, it's a division matchup. I always like to see trends. I think the trends really matter a lot more in division matchups than any other matchups. So I was looking, and I'm going through this for like 10 straight years, 12. And I'm going, I can't believe this. The dog in the series, actually, let's keep this in mind too, because just to remind everybody, because last year, the last game of the regular season, Baltimore, Pittsburgh. Baltimore played basically nobody, didn't need the game, rested everybody. Pittsburgh needed the game, had to win the game to get to the postseason. And so Pittsburgh was the favorite, obviously, in Baltimore because of that reason. Everybody was sitting for Baltimore. So Pittsburgh wins. By the way, it was a 7-point game, not a 3, 7. So the trends didn't work at all in that game, but it made sense. Baltimore wasn't playing anybody. It wasn't a real game. But if you look at the previous 12 games when they were all real games, the dog in this series, 9-3 straight up, 11-0-1 against the spread. So you talk about 3-point games and the dog, and right there, just over the last 12 games prior to the game, week 17, or whatever it was, week 18 last year, the dog is the way to go.
Well, if you'd asked me, Greg, why is the dog so strong in this series, I would have probably rolled it right back to what we opened the conversation about, and it's given the fact that the closeness of the series, the 24 of the 52 games by a field goal or less, that's going to obviously support the underdog in a football matchup just like this. So, it's a good way to look here in this game here. Victor, did you say the under in this contest?
Yeah.
I haven't touched on it yet, guys. Go ahead, Jim.
Yes.
We talked about it a while ago about how well Lamar does against the NFC teams that only see him every once in a while.
Right.
But this is the opposite. This is a team, and these division teams where they play him a lot and they know how to deal with him because he's a very unusually talented human being. Hardly anybody else plays the game like he does. So that's probably one of the reasons why these games are so close. They know each other too well.
Good point. Yeah, real good point. Lamar Jackson, I mean, unbelievable athlete. He's going to go down into the Hall of Fame as one of the greatest NFL football players of all time. I mean,
he's incredible. Yes, he is.
Yes, really he is.
By the way, before Victor continues,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is also an important game for Pittsburgh from the standpoint of it. They're 7-2. Baltimore is 7-3 because there hasn't been a bye yet for the Steelers. I think it comes up pretty soon. A win by Baltimore would put them at 8-3 and leave Pittsburgh at 7-3, with the rematch occurring in Baltimore later in the year. So it's very important from a home field advantage and from maintaining first place. Pittsburgh cannot afford the loss here if they want to have an opportunity to overtake, or it'd be more difficult to overtake Baltimore later.
What makes it difficult to understand, why would you make Baltimore a 3-point favorite on the road to them in this situation? It seems like the worst it should be is pick.
Yeah, it's not like Pittsburgh's playing bad football
No.
at all. They're playing their best football. So I scratch my head a little bit too at this number here. I don't know if there's a lot of people that come and bet Baltimore regularly in large gobs, and they just don't want to give a price away to them. But like I say, I see some holes here for this football team, at least especially defensively. And how does it all shake out, Victor, from an over-under standpoint, given these two division rivals?
Well, when I look at the line, I mean, we're around 48 points, and that just makes my eyes bug out seeing a Baltimore-Pittsburgh game with a over-under line that high. In fact, it's the second highest over-under line in the history of this series.
Whoa.
Back in 2018, there was a 51 when these two teams played. But other than that, this is the 48.0. And hey, I
think Roethlisberger was probably the reason, because he was still with the Steelers at that time.
Right. And I don't blame the people for wanting to bet the over, considering the fact that Baltimore is the number one over team in the NFL this season. They've gone 9 overs, only 1 under. They've gone under in 6 consecutive. They've gone over in 6 consecutive games. The Baltimore Ravens. They're off an 859 combined yardage game last Thursday against Cincinnati. Not only that, but Russell Wilson, you guys touched on this. He brings an explosive play element to Pittsburgh that they have not had since those Ben Roethlisberger years. He throws a beautiful deep ball, and they've remarked, Pickens, Mike Williams, they've remarked that he just throws a beautiful deep ball. And as a result now, not only is Baltimore on a multi-game over streak, but Pittsburgh has now gone over the total in each of their last 4 games as well. They've scored 26 or more points now in each of those last 4 games. So, yeah, everything is pointing to what looks to be a potentially high-scoring game between these two teams. With that said, I cannot sanction betting the over in this game. For me, it's going to be betting the under, maybe just laying off, maybe playing a little underdog money, and then just kind of going from there. After all, it's historically a very low-scoring series between these two teams. And not only that, you mentioned the fact that Pittsburgh has done a very, very good job in defensing Lamar Jackson throughout his
That is
career.
true.
It's pretty much
Yeah.
the only defense in the league that has done a great job containing Lamar Jackson. The last 7 meetings in this series, all 7 of them have gone under the total. Not only that, but average points combined in those games, only 30.4. It's
Wow.
historically a low-scoring series. And for me, I'm not going to touch the over. I know a lot of knee-jerk bettors will this week. That's okay. Go right ahead. Good luck to you.
But didn't
But
you
it's
write
the under or nothing, guys.
didn't you write in your newsletter this week about how many unders there were recently? It's been an under.
Yeah,
run.
we're coming off a very low-scoring week in the NFL, guys. It was the second lowest scoring week of the season last week. Only 40.7 combined points per game, 4 overs, 9 unders, and a tie. That Sunday night game was pretty much a tie between Houston and Detroit. But again, second lowest scoring week of the season, less than 41 points per game in the NFL. And if you're going to bet this game, guys, again, it's the under or nothing.
Rick,
by the
when
way,
you're
the Cubes-
when you're analyzing totals, we do have a lot of very young, inexperienced head coaches, offensive coordinators, and quarterbacks. So when you look at the league, let's say the bottom 16 and the top 16, how does that split out when you analyzing the trends? Do the top teams score more or less when they're playing, and then the bottom teams, of course, when they have bad quarterbacks and bad offensive coordinators, bad coaches, not bad, but just inexperienced. Let's just say inexperienced. Be kind. So do you split it out that way when you look at the league? Because it is kind of split down the middle now.
You do have to take a look at the coaching staffs and the experience of those coaching staffs when you're looking at a game, and from a side perspective or from an over-under perspective. That's for sure. Again, these guys have been in place a long time. They play each other very often, like you mentioned. It's more important. Trends are more important in division games than they are in non-conference games or in non-division conference play. And again, I can't ignore the fact that it's historically been a very low-scoring series between these two teams. I don't want any part of over 48. Sorry, guys.
So
Yeah,
if Victor says it's Tomlin and Harbaugh, it's a chess match. And with the
It's
chess
a field
match,
position game.
yes.
Let's keep that potent Baltimore offense off the field as long as we can. How can we do that?
Yeah.
We pound the ball with Najee Harris, with Jalen Warren. We maybe scale back the yards per attempt with the Russell Wilson plays, and we try and keep that potent Baltimore offense off the field.
Andy, where does the logical approach go to in a football game like this? Really marquee matchup.
Well, as I mentioned a little while ago, I'm automatically compelled to take +3 or better with either side, regardless of where it's being played. But again, you guys, and we mentioned earlier, Pittsburgh's had great success. Tomlin's had great success against Harbaugh. He's had great success against Lamar Jackson, etc. The game is important for both teams. Baltimore, because 7 wins, they're pretty. They've recovered from some of their early season woes where they were winning games but not playing all that well. Although, as you point out, they have had some defensive issues the last few weeks in the yardage they've given up. I like Pittsburgh to win the game. Baltimore games this year are averaging about 56, 57 points. Pittsburgh games are averaging about 41 points. So they didn't quite split the difference. But the fact that Baltimore has the, let's call it the more established, maybe that's not the right word because Wilson's been around a long time, but maybe more weapons, or he's done more as far as because of his running ability and all that, although Wilson, is capable as well. The public likes Baltimore, so I think that's why the total, rather than split it right down the middle, is a little bit towards Baltimore, which is, again, why I think they are as high of a favorite at this game as they are, because Baltimore is much more of a public team than the Steelers are, particularly because the public at large, not the wise guys, will probably be all over Pittsburgh. Most of them will be, I think, on Pittsburgh in this game. But the public at large tends to look at offenses and make comparisons based on offense, with defensive comparisons maybe 25% of the handicap, offensive comparisons 75%.
Hey, guys, before I turn this over to Greg DePalma and we do our roundtable, I want to share with our listeners out there and our viewers about the current playoff picture and how it stands going into this weekend in the National Football League. And I love doing this because it gives teams some extra incentive, if you will. to either play well or not to play. But if the playoffs were to start this weekend, number 1 seed, obviously, Kansas City, 9-0. Number 2, Buffalo. Number 3, Pittsburgh, who is 2 spots ahead of number 5, Baltimore. It's only because Pittsburgh has only played 9 games and Baltimore has played 10. But nonetheless, it's 3 Pittsburgh, 4 the Houston Texans, 5 Pittsburgh, 6 the LA Chargers, and 7 the Denver Broncos. Right on the heels of them are all teams with losing records, but still knocking on the door. The Indianapolis Colts, Cincinnati Bengals at 4-6 apiece, Miami Dolphins, New York Jets, Patriots, Browns, Titans, Raiders, and Jaguars. And out of that group, I might say that I would be most fearful if I was one of these 7 teams that was positioned right now to have a seed. The one team that I would be most fearful of would be that number 9 guy, the Cincinnati Bengals, who've gotten off to a rotten start, but yet take a look at where everything is here. They're only 1 game back at Denver from a playoff position as far as playoff seeding goes. On the NFC side of things, number 1, obviously, the Detroit Lions, who many people feel are the best team in the NFL this year. Number 2, Philadelphia. Number 3, the Atlanta Falcons, a little bit of a surprise. Number 4, the Arizona Cardinals, and that's probably more a surprise than anybody. But that's who they are. That's the Arizona Cardinals. We talked about them before and the job that they're doing. Kyler Murray's having a great football season. Behind them, the Minnesota Vikings, the Washington Commanders, and the Green Bay Packers. And sitting on the bubble, I won't go through all the list of them, but I'll mention the 4 teams that are either 5 or 4 wins. The San Francisco 49ers right now at the number 8 seed, Bears 4-5, Seahawks 4-5, and Rams 4-5. And if like Cincinnati was the team I'd be fearful in the AFC, it would obviously be the 49ers out of the NFC.
I'm going to make a little bit of a case for Miami. They are 3-6 now with the win. We've got Tua back. I mentioned how well they're playing. They've already played 2 games against Buffalo. They have upcoming games: Raiders this week, Patriots next week, at Green Bay. Quite likely a loss, but not necessarily. 2 games against the Jets. They play at Cleveland late in the season. They do host the 49ers, and they're at the Texans. 10-7 might get them in. I can see Miami 9-8 might. I can see Miami making a bit of a run because of how they've been playing. Like I said before, better defensively than a lot of people have been able to recognize because of all the offensive issues that they've had. As long as Tua stays healthy, I can see Miami making a little bit of a run. And I might, even though they're a game behind Cincinnati, I could see them catching the Bengals.
What are the odds of them making the playoffs?
They're probably they got to be plus probably 200, if not higher.
It's got to be higher than that to make it worth it, I think. But yeah, but
I'll
yeah, you're right.